Hi, my name is Kathy Salata. I have lived experience with an eating disorder. And one thing that we often do not like to talk about, but it needs to be talked about, is relapse. So I had gone to treatment a couple of times. The first time didn't stick. So I went back into treatment and it stuck. And I felt a great deal of guilt, a great deal of shame. I felt like I was a failure. But now I learned that I didn't start from the beginning. What I went the first time, I learned some skills. I just needed to learn more skills. So let's talk a little bit about relapse. I know it's a bad word, but let's get right into it. What is relapse? So according to the DSM-5, relapse is a return in symptoms. Most people focus on the action, such as a return of restricting, binging, but in my experience, I found that is more about mindset and intention than actual behavior. For example, if I missed one snack because my work meeting went long, that would not mean I relapsed. However, if I ate all of my meals in snacks but skimped a little or a portion to reduce weight, that would be considered a relapse. The most important thing to keep in mind is relapse is not failure. It is part of the recovery process. In my opinion, being dishonest with yourself or others about your relapse leads to shame, it leads to isolation, which are breeding grounds for eating disorders. I'd relapsed twice and felt a great deal of shame about my behavior. I isolated because I didn't want to disappoint those that loved and cared about me. I also did not want to have to explain my behavior because, quite honestly, I couldn't explain it to myself. As I reflect back, I learned two things. One, I learned what my triggers were: people pleasing, valuing myself for my achievements, boundary setting. Those are things I needed to work on. So when I returned to treatment, I didn't start from scratch. My first time in recovery was not a waste of time. It was invaluable. And there I developed a strong foundation to return to my authentic self. I had to develop effective coping mechanisms for the first time in my life. The eating disorder thrives in shame. So after my first relapse, I isolated. If I had to do it all over again, I would have reached out. I have an amazing support group, but your support team is only good if you use them. They are there for the support. The eating disorder also thrives in deceit. I'd found that I was lying by always having a smile on my face. My dietitian describes it as toxic positivity. I wasn't fooling anyone but myself. So, how do you break the shame cycle? My favorite tools were opposite action and talking to myself as I would a friend. Have realistic expectations of yourself and remind yourself that you are human. I also stress the importance of compassion. If you had a friend with a broken arm who could not do a task, would you berate them and say, get over it? Of course not. I recommend you give yourself that same grace. You can do it. I know because I did. And at one time, I thought I would be living eternally with a constant calorie counter, nutrition label reader, exercise counter in my head. Now I look back and discover that I wasted so much time and effort on that instead of actually stopping and becoming a friend of my body and not its worst enemy. So, some things that may help you is recognize that recovery is a ride, ups and down. So, some tools that can help you get back on track: educate your loved ones on what eating disorder recovery looks like. It's not this going up a slope, it's like a roller coaster. Look for the warning signs. And one big thing that I did when I would return to treatment is, it was scary. I still get the pit in my stomach when I talk about it. Is I gave my friends and family my yellow warning signs and my red warning signs. When you see this, call me out on it. Call me out on it. So some of mine could be avoiding situations around food, skipping meals, a need for control, perfectionism, an increase in exercise, looking at health related apps, social media, body checking, like doing this with your body checking, comparisons. Oh, comparisons to me is a bad word. recognize that, be kind to yourself, that recovery is not linear. Revisit your social media exposure and block any media that causes distress. And do one thing that your future self will thank you for each day. Get support from support groups, from people who just get it. Ask for help. You deserve it. Identify the warning signs and then go back to basics to get back on track. That means following a meal plan, checking in regularly, having that mindful movement. You do deserve recovery, and it's not a straight line. So recognize, give yourself grace, treat yourself like your own best friend because you deserve